Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second interview on the channel. I am delighted to have here with me David Dino, one of the best level designers on LittleBigPlanet 3. I just got to say, David, I really got into LittleBigPlanet during LittleBigPlanet 2, and LittleBigPlanet 3 was a big thing for me and the channel as well. And most people nowadays know you from the tutorials in LittleBigPlanet 3. And old players know you from your Game of the Year levels and other things you worked on. But yeah, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Okay, wow, okay. Big info drop, or drop, excuse me, all things considered. So yeah, my name is David Dino. I currently work as a key account manager for Sumo Digital. That involves ensuring we're working on projects across the board, lining things up to make sure that the right teams are on the right games, so on and so forth. That's been really cool, all things considered. But before that, y'all might know me, as you had mentioned, as a game designer on the LittleBigPlanet franchise, having worked officially, well, not officially, but more of an official game designer, status on LittleBigPlanet 2, LittleBigPlanet Vita, and LittleBigPlanet 3, obviously. And then previously to that, had worked as I guess you'd call it a freelancer or a contractor on the Game of the Year edition, where one of my levels was featured, which is crazy to think of, all things considered. And prior to that, I used to work in the healthcare industry. So dreams can come true, I guess, if you want, if you put your mind to it, all that jazz. But it's been really cool, just seeing this trajectory and everything like that after playing LittleBigPlanet eons ago, just thinking, hey, I could get back into attempting to make games, because I did initially have a bachelor's in computer science, and the goal was to when I was in uni decades ago, that's weird to say as well too, I'm really old, was to make video games, but things changed along the way. Ended up in healthcare, all things considered, and that was a real good experience. But of course, sometimes you kind of just want to do things that you really had fun with. And when LittleBigPlanet came out, especially when that beta period came out as well too, just, this is a lot easier. I mean, computers back then weren't as powerful as the ones that we have now. Engines weren't as, I guess you want to call it, democratized or as easy to get into as well, to game engines for making games. So having something like this with a PS3 that was, relatively capable, and you can share things quite easily, make things quite easly. It was really cool to be able to do that, push the limits of that. And now I'm here. When did the game come out? 2008, I think, the first game?
Yeah, for LittleBigPlanet 1. Yep.
So what is that? 24 years? No, I don't believe that. Is it?
It's like 16, 17 years ago.
16 years later, yeah. I'm in the games industry. Yeah. it's wild when I try to put everything together. And then, funny enough, right? Only, what was it? Was it last week or the week before? It was the 14-year anniversary of when we did the LittleBigPlanet Guinness World Record attempt over in New York. And I actually have it here. I was trying to find it before the trip, or the call. But yeah, there it is. Let me see if I can line it up. Yeah, so that was all the stuff that we did to get Guinness World Records on LittleBigPlanet 1, I believe it was. And yeah, we got 5 of them. And a funny story with that as well too was that after we did the event, they were gonna mail these things over, obviously get it properly certified and everything with our names. And the first one that they sent me had the wrong year, so I actually have one, or at least one certificate with 5 records for 2010 when we did it in 2011. And so I messaged them like, hey, it's cool and all that I have this, but you got the year wrong. So they actually sent another one. So technically, by by mistake, I have 2 certificates for Guinness World Records versus 1. But it's fun. It's fun. And again, couldn't have done it without LittleBigPlanet and everybody that was behind it. So it's been really cool. It's been really cool.
Right. Wow.
That's my rant.
That's amazing. No, that's great because LittleBigPlanet definitely kickstarted something big for you, of course.
Yeah.
Being able to get into Sumo Digital. And it's an amazing game. And so about working on the game, right? So when you were at Sumo initially a few years back, this is sort of an interesting, like it's a simple question in nature, but it's something that a lot of people want to know. What did you do exactly, and did it line up with your expectations of what you thought the job would be? And of course, what do you do now with being a key accounts manager? Explain that.
So it is interesting to say the least. So even beforehand, one of the things that kind of got me more involved with Media Molecule, Sony, and eventually Sumo Digital was being asked to kind of be an ambassador for LittleBigPlanet at different shows. So aside from continuing to make stuff in game to show off at, like, let's say Comic-Con or E3, so there's a lot of like presentation talking about the things, how I did it, so on and so forth, why we do it, and just being, again, like I said, just an ambassador to talk about the game, bring people in, so on and so forth. When I finally got the offer to become a level designer on LittleBigPlanet, there were two things that I was thinking of. Obviously, being a bit further in life and in my healthcare career, it was just kind of like, okay, I can just go straight into design, focus on being a designer, go move up. Or if that doesn't work out, at the very least, I could use that to get into the industry and then kind of find my way around that as well, to utilizing some of the stuff that I've done. Previously, I worked as a risk analyst at the hospital that I worked at before joining Sumo. So there was a lot of like analytics involved, which, to be fair, with like the way things, how with like live ops, player telemetry, so on and so forth, being able to analyze those things, I thought maybe that'd be pretty cool. If not, at the very least, I know I can talk about games. So I might be able to at least move in that direction if the design thing doesn't necessarily work out. So when we joined Sumo, it was like they said, we are building the game with the same tools that everybody else that is playing the game is using. So it didn't feel too far off from what you would do after work, just to build levels and everything like that. But of course, everything had to stick to specific plans because we had deadlines to meet, milestones to make, so on and so forth, to ensure that the game came out. But it didn't feel that much different. There was just a lot more responsibility behind the stuff that we were making, because it was going to be sold ultimately. So, but it was still cool. Obviously, being part of that foundation and helping the team come up with tools and coming up with ideas to help build out help with the imaginations of the things that people want to make. And as creators, we've always, prior to coming to work at Sumo on the LittleBigPlanet franchise, it was just kind of like, what do I want the most? Obviously, there are limitations to the game simply because of, technology, so on and so forth. But being able to kind of steer some of the decisions that were made to help create LittleBigPlanet 3 and to help eventually create some of the cooler things that were built in the community, it was really nice to have that input.
Yeah. And you've given input in a lot of ways. And one of the most interesting ways you have given input is your voiceovers for the tutorials. And I want to get into that a little bit.
Sure.
Why were you chosen to do them? Did you volunteer to help out, or how did that happen? Why didn't Sumo decide to hire Stephen Fry to voice them like in LittleBigPlanet 1 or 2?
So that was a very good question. Number one, we had a bajillion more tutorials to do. And from the ground up, to be honest, if we were to ask Stephen Fry to do that, it probably cost a lot of money. So having having done the public speaking and everything like that about LittleBigPlanet. And even prior to actually starting to record those tutorials for the game, I think I did my Twitch interview at Gamescom, kind of walking through how we use the tools to obviously make all these cool things, just opening up again the possibilities with the things that we've created for the community. And I think that went down so well at least in my head anyway. And not to I guess put down any of my coworkers, but I think from a public speaking perspective as well too, and being able to kind of just have a nice flow, maybe it might have been I might have been the best option for that. I don't know. Anyway, but as you know, I ended up voicing over, I think it was like 160 tutorials altogether. So
sounds about right.
Yeah, that was wild to say the least. So that was really fun. That was really fun. Yeah, and at the same time, it was like, heck yeah, I'll take the opportunity to kind of help voice all that and in a weird way guide people to how to use things. So I really enjoyed doing that. Long nights, but it was fun getting that right. Like everything probably took at least 15 takes. So you can imagine how much time, how much recording,
wow,
and editing. Yeah, and obviously with like the more complicated tools, like I think it was the I already forget some of the names already, but it's like I think what were the crazy ones that dealt with more temperature? I think there was like save areas and everything like that. Just the number of lines that we had to say in order to make it easier to explain for people was wild. And then on top of that, recording the videos to match what was being said at the same time was like, yeah, it was intense. Yeah.
So about that, so of course, doing the tutorials, right, doing the voiceovers, you definitely establish yourself as a known figure or unknown, depending on how much people look into, you know, who did the voiceovers. But in doing that, and being a part of the team, a lot of members who worked at Media Molecule or Sumo Digital ended up getting rare pins when working on the game. So did you happen to get any of those? And what were some of your favorite pins in the game?
Were these the physical ones or the ones that we have in...
The ones on your
game
profile. Yeah, in game.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Oh, gosh. I wish I could bring up the profile because I do have a couple that were like quite different, to say the least. I think there was one... Obviously, there was the creator one, which is really cool. I think we had one. I want to say we made one for the Guinness World Record as well, too. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like there were a couple that were like absolutely bespoke to just us alone. What else? Yeah, there was a dev one. I know, at least for me, I have at least probably 10 that were bespoke to us. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, just you know, obviously, when LittleBigPlanet came out and you started, you know, collecting those pins, it was really cool to see that grow. And then as a developer, it's like, finally I got one. that's a bespoke to me, so I can't complain one bit. Right. But I think, yeah, I'd probably say the developer one was definitely the one that kind of hit close to, you know, hit quite hard, simply because it was like, I made it. That's me. That's me right there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so going on the track of pins, I mean, everyone knows that, you know, when the LittleBigPlanet server shut down, you know, many people were affected. And there were, of course, people who abused the system to not only get hearts, but also to get pins as well. And going on that track, for the duration of the lifetime of the community, there have always been copied levels just floating around everywhere. So I want to know, what's your opinion on those? And did you ever play the copied levels?
Um, you know, from my perspective as a developer, if you're, kind of abusing the system in order to get the likes and all that jazz, and that sucks, you know. If there was a way to potentially reroute the visibility to the original level, then then fair enough, or at least the creator anyway. But it's I've always felt a bit negative on that, just because, of course, the abuse of the system in order to copy the levels and everything like that. That's a lot of hard work for people, especially when they're doing like RPGs and stuff like that. It's just, like, dude, yeah, I mean, it sucks ultimately in the grand scheme of things, and we wish that never happened. But people, when there's a will, there's a way. And we were always, because I worked a lot with the I think the community team on post launch and everything like that as well, to help kind of discover that using like the telemetry and whatnot. So yeah, it was a battle. But I kind of wish that, it's similar to like things with social media and everything like that. Like you see a meme get really popular, but that it's not the original creator, and it's like, oh it sucks. So in the same vein, it's quite like that. But hopefully people that did originally create it somehow got eventually the kudos that they deserved for that. To the point, that's why people, what do they say? Imitation is the best form of flattery type situation, if you want to swing it in that direction.
So in terms of looking into player telemetry and all of that data, when we were just talking about copied levels, can you tell me more about your relationship with the team as a whole, and specifically Steve and Ayee? How did your role fit in with his role, if there was any connection there?
Oh yeah, we actually worked quite closely post launch. As I moved into a more the telemetry role, player telemetry, game telemetry, and everything like that, getting a better idea of how people were playing the game, so on and so forth. A lot of it was back and forth. Steve literally sat next to me in the studio, and we'd always go back and forth and try to verify things that he would get from the community, so on and so forth. And same with me. It's like, oh, is this the same player profile, or is this how people really seem like they're playing? Because a lot of the times, every month, I would find ways to kind of see what people were touching in the game, what people were in, what obviously things that sold best, things that people are playing more in terms of like community levels, even just within the game. So we would find ways to at least speak to the higher ups and say, look, maybe we should tune the game in this direction because we see people moving in here, vice versa, or maybe we want more people to look at this, so therefore we should make this in an update, that type of stuff. So, and Steven, obviously being the big community lead and everything, the head honcho in that space, helped verify a lot of those things. So it was really cool. And then obviously with the streams as well too, we worked together on that. So that was that was fun.
So being able to verify those things in the community and seeing what kinds of levels people were playing and other pieces of data about that, what kinds of levels did you enjoy the most, and do you still enjoy the most?
Oh man, so I've always been an action game fan, so things that kind of took I guess player control to the limit and everything like that. It was really cool to me. Like when people implemented things that were like, oh, now it's a side-scrolling shooter or a top-down shooter, or vehicular stuff as well, where again it goes beyond the expectations of what you can do when you play a Sackboy. It's been really cool to me. At least from one of the last things I did before I moved on from the LittleBigPlanet franchise was build the God of War 3 remastered level. So seeing people do very similar things always gets my attention, and I really enjoyed that, especially from a top-down perspective.
And so about building levels, not just a playing them. What was it like building levels for the games? And how did building, this is a very interesting aspect to the question, how did building levels differ between doing it by yourself versus a team?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because it's all about consistency across the board. I mean, we are working as a team. We're working with our directors. So, and even though we're so used to building things in our own division, obviously we have to be able to kind of shape that at a certain point. But it kind of worked very similar to how game devs do it anyway. So we had like kind of the core designers that are building out levels, and then we have the artists that would end up coming in and changing things accordingly. So we'd build out things, we'd always call it a gray box. So first we create these things called motifs where we can potentially use them in different parts of a level. And then once we find the ones that work properly together, we will work in sync using the multiplayer function, oddly enough, or funny enough, to ensure that everything is in proper order. And then we play that level, no dress up or anything like that, to ensure that at the very least the gameplay is good. If it doesn't play good, regardless of how it looks, we got to get rid of it, right? So once that's been approved and we have the design directors and everybody give their thumbs up, we'll go ahead and move on arting things and everything like that. So working as a team was really fun, to say the least, because you hopefully we're able to kind of synergize, learn new things, and then that obviously helps you improve as a whole. So yeah, that was really fun.
Nice. And in terms of your levels, how do you feel about, and I'm sure you'd love to answer this, how do you feel about having some of your levels in Game of the Year edition?
That was kind of crazy, to say the least, because in the grand scheme of things, I had no expectations of getting, of potentially working on a title like this. All the levels that I created focused a lot on vehicular, mecha, or action titles. So to be able to put something like that in a Game of the Year edition with technically no previous game design experience was really wild. And looking back at those levels as well too now, after all the experience that I've had, I was like, I wish I had somebody to just kind of, or at least from a design perspective, just sit with me and be like, okay, you really shouldn't have done that, or you should move in this direction, because it's funny looking at, okay, as a gamer, you're like, oh, I can do this. But working on the Game of the Year edition, we had deadlines just as much as everybody else, because the game needs to get out at a specific time. And I was doing all this in the US, whereas we were syncing with people in the UK, specifically XDev. And I know that there was no expectations to have each of those levels be as professional as the main game, because you're asking literally amateurs to do this stuff within a specific time frame, and they all have different lives. So, too, I was doing this on the side, on top of my 9 to 5 at the hospital, and I was working on my master's as well too. So it was quite wild, but I wanted to be part of the Game of the Year edition. So lots of different things to work on. But yeah, I wish I had some help from a design perspective just to guide me through. But it was still cool to see how different everybody approached those levels for the Game of the Year edition as well too, because it just showed the level of creativity and variety that you can do in LittleBigPlanet. And that's just LittleBigPlanet 1. Imagine if we did something like that for LittleBigPlanet 2, where logic systems and there's more space, so on and so forth. Yeah, it would have been really cool. Regardless, all the stuff that people have made in the community have been super awesome to begin with. So yeah, it was cool, super cool.
Wow. And in terms of stuff getting featured, as you know, you're probably aware that LittleBigPlanet has a presence on YouTube as well, and TikTok and a bunch of these other platforms. So I just got to ask you this. Do you watch any LittleBigPlanet stuff on YouTube? Are you still watching and interested in the game, or have you moved on to maybe different titles?
Funny enough, right? Every once in a while, I'll start clicking through because I'll see because on my YouTube channel, it's been I haven't used it for Little Big Planet in ages, but I started getting like I'll get the occasional pings like, oh, I think it was like Little Big Planet 2 beta, the most recent one. I think it was like 2 days ago. I think it was somebody did "I Got a Feeling" by Black Eyed Peas on the synthesizer. And this message came up. It's like, oh wow, I love this song. And I was like, what year is this? So I'll always go back to YouTube and check your channels out and see what's going on. It has been a while since I've properly engaged with Little Big Planet, but being able to see stuff, obviously that has been built through the years, and the fact that people are still, messing around with it is insane. I think that's it's a testament to the work that Media Molecule and obviously the Sumo team have done across the board, because that game, this series was literally created by fans, to the point where Sony and Sumo Digital and Tarzia, for example, who worked on the Vita game, literally hired people from the community to build this thing. So it's really cool.
Right, and it shows that there's still a testament in the community, because people are still creating content even after the shutdown of the servers. And what I wanted to ask you about that is, when the shutdown happened, what did you think about it? How did it affect you? How do you see Little Big Planet after it?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question, because I've spent how can you put this, like a significant part of my life with Little Big Planet. And so when you heard the news and everything like that go down, I'd been quite removed from the franchise at that point as well too. It was definitely sad, just because obviously the community connects through online, and not being able to access that stuff, especially since it spanned across 1, 2, and 3. Was like, oh, after everything, I mean, being in the business as well too, and everything like that, and understanding things are driven by numbers and sales and whatnot, I get it, and that's an unfortunate consequence of just the way things are now in the industry. But yeah, it did. I was quite sad, and obviously, just kind of reached out and just left a couple messages here and there. And obviously with Steven doing his thing as well too, so it's just like, oh man, end of an era. End of an era. But again, it's cool to see that people still hold the franchise and the games in quite high regard. I'd love to see Sackboy come back in some form or fashion. Obviously, our team did Sackboy Big Adventure as well too, and that was a cool game. But it'd be cool to see that creation aspect come back, to say the least.
So about that, what you just said about them working on Sackboy Big Adventure, this is probably a very interesting question that I think a lot of people have, and it's, do you think, and I think the answer is obvious, do you think there should be a new Little Big Planet game, and would you prefer Little Big Planet 4 or Sackboy Big Adventure 2?
Oh my gosh, I would. Okay. How can I answer this? That is a good question. I would love if there was a new one. I would love for them to combine aspects of Little Big Planet and the gameplay of Sackboy as well too. I think one of the things that being as objective as possible, actually really being subjective, to be fair, I love platforming. And to be fair, obviously, as much as we can do, especially considering the engines that we worked on, Little Big Planet could have been a bit more responsive in regards to the platforming section. But you work with what you got, and I think that's what made it really charming. When Sackboy was developed, obviously there was a focus on those on that feeling, that control, and I really enjoyed that game as well too. I mean, they're obvious parallels to the stuff that that Nintendo have done and everything like that, and it kind of shows in that respect. So if there was a way to combine all that, that would be for me, that would be my perfect LBP / Sackboy.
Nice.
The thing is, though, building in 3D is really tough. adding another dimension. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are super talented people out there that have done crazy things on all different types of engines, all different type of creations, so on and so forth. The thing is, when we talk about things like LittleBigPlanet and even Dreams as well too, we want to make it as easy as possible for people to get into. When you add just another layer, another dimension to that process, there are so many variables that come into play, and things like UEFN, for example, they do a pretty good job in doing that. Obviously, people have created really cool things in that space as well too, but it's hard finding that balance, So I think if we can find a way to find that magic point, that would be really cool. As both as the developer and the gamer as well.
And in terms of finding that magic point, a lot of people in the LittleBigPlanet community have managed to do that with their levels, and even with when the DLC was being produced. I don't know if you worked on the DLC or whatnot, but you see a lot of this attention to detail in the levels, in the community, in the DLC packs. So I wanted to know, and this is sort of a triple-fold question. What is your favorite LittleBigPlanet game out of the franchise? What's your favorite level? And what's your favorite DLC?
Oh my gosh. DLC, arguably, or actually probably not even arguably, it's probably the Metal Gear Solid one. That was so cool. Again, that was just one of those things where you're like, you can make that in LittleBigPlanet. People are making it. I mean, obviously the creators and they teamed up with Koji Pro and everything like that. But to be able to see something like that in LittleBigPlanet, and obviously the fact that you can add bullets to the game. You can actually have the Metal Gear Solid theme in the game. Just opened up a world of just imagination, really, on what you can technically do. So what was the first one? My favorite LittleBigPlanet game?
Yeah.
Oh, dangerous. Probably one as well too, simply because that's what got me here, really. And I think the lack of tools, even though it did, there was a limitation in what you could create, seeing the stuff that people were able to do in spite of that, just like the logic system people were using with pulleys and levers to create calculators, flying machines, and all that stuff. It had this just enough jank, but like it was so quirky that you're like, I made this somehow. This is fantastic. And even though like the levels were only built for, I don't know, if you like built a flying machine, it would only and it went as fast as possible. It would only last for like maybe 5 seconds. It was still really fun working within that box, I think. So I think that's I have like probably the fondest memories of that in that sense. Not to say that I didn't have great memories with 2 and 3, because I was able to build some really, really cool stuff as well too. I think, and 2, I think I want to say 2's beta was probably my most favorite though, simply because we started working with the Sackbots and everything, and you can do some really cool stuff with that. So that was really fun. And what was the other question?
Your favorite level?
Oh, favorite level.
It's a hard one.
Are we talking about on disc or?
So I would say, it can be on disc, it can be community.
On disc. The one with that stupid wheel in number 1.
The bunker.
Yeah, the bunker. That's the one. Number 1, the music is way wild in that one for the type of level that it is, and I love it. And I've used that track.
The Wilderness soundtrack.
The Wilderness, yeah, in so many levels, just because it just, again, layers upon layers, and I really did enjoy the balance and difficulty of that. Oh man, favorite community level, it's got to be ramp, right? Can't go wrong with ramp. It's really tough. There was there was an RPG. It was a top-down RPG that started like implementing save states quite well. And the first level of it, had like it was like a flower monster. I forget what it was, but that I'd argue that one stood with me quite well. After everything that we've done on the game as a developer, I was like, wow, people are really taking this to new heights. So I was like, yeah, that one.
Nice. And so about making levels and just in general being creative, and coming up with your own stuff and sharing it with the world. There's an interesting element to that when we start to bring in timers, right? When we time people on these things. So about that, what do you think about game jams, and how do you come up with ideas when you join one of these events?
Right. I used to run the game jams at Sumo Digital, and interesting. I was like, when you brought this up, I was like, oh, okay. I love game jams simply because, again, it provides a box that you kind of want to work outside of. How crazy can I get with this particular limitation? One thing that we that we've supported in this charity with, Special Effect, that I'm an ambassador of. They do this every October. They have a charity. Why can't I remember the name specifically? But one special day, and I asked them, like, what if we did a one button game jam? So something like that, right? It sounds wild, but people have crazy ideas on how to implement this one button. Somebody did, what the heck did they do? They created a 3D punching RPG, and I was like, what? How are you doing this with one button? So it's understanding. It helps you understand limitations. It helps you get around these things, and the ideas that come out of it are fantastic. In regards to like timeframes as well too. Again, limitations kind of breed, how can I put this, crazy innovation. So I'm all for game jams. I'm all for time game jams and everything like that. It's assuming you do have the time to do it. But I would suggest people, if game design is something that people want to get into, game jams are a fantastic way of understanding what game developers have to do with milestones in a way, because you have to kind of cut the fat, make sure everything works as well too within a certain time frame, and then live with the results, to say the least. But then I think as long as you can keep an open mind and continue to use the information that you've just or the experiences that you've had with those things, hopefully it'll help formulate even better ideas with different things down the line. So I'm all for it. I love game jams, absolutely do. One thing that I did, and this was in a different engine for one button game jam. I made this fighting game. Again, I was like, how? But it was called Ayee the Kitty, where you controlled like a samurai kitty, and you had to use different one button combinations and sequences, so on and so forth, to be able to do the different moves. And it was quite interesting, to say the least. But it did work out in the end. But again, it helped me kind of understand, number one, what do I need to do in order to hit this vision? Number two, is that vision too much for the amount of time? And because I did it by myself as well too. For the amount of time that I have personally to put to this together, and then just figuring out ways to scope everything out was really fun, to say the least. So yes, game jams, I'm all for it.
Nice. I am too. I've never actually been to a game jam, but I'm hoping to be a part of one in the future. Mm-hmm. And in terms of being resourceful with the limited time that you have to do these things, this breeds another sort of interesting question. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. What new game technology or trends like VR or AI, for example, do you think will be huge in the future? How do you see them affecting games? Do you have any concerns for them evolving as technologies?
Yeah, obviously AI is a big thing, and I think for all its negatives, I think people are still trying to work out the positives. Obviously energy, obviously taking content, learning models, so on and so forth. That's probably, at least from my understanding and what I've seen, that's probably closer to the trajectory that we'll see things. VR, I mean, it's really cool, but it's also for as immersive as it is. I think the hardware and whatnot, it might be limiting just because it's one person, but people find cool ways to implement it. So I'm looking forward to seeing those things become a bit more prolific in ways that I haven't thought of as well. If I were a betting man, I'd probably just put a bit more on people trying to figure out how to use AI more sufficiently, more, how can I put this, the right way, ultimately. So, everybody feels that we're using it correctly, if that makes sense. But, obviously, I think we're seeing people use those more for like NPCs and everything like that. Hopefully that makes interacting with them in games, whether or not it is online or not, become more natural. The way you interact with things in terms of them being able to kind of respond to the way, like whether or not it's speech or whether or not it's just like variables, so on and so forth. It'd be very interesting. I mean, when people say AI for video games, sometimes it does get mixed up with like, well, we already have bots, right? But sometimes those bots are also built within a specific box to imitate certain things. When we start implementing AI, how far do you want that to go? Do you really want it to be a play more like a player, or how far do you want it to learn to the point where it might become too good, to say the least, and players stop enjoying it because the challenge is too far against us. So yeah, it's something to see how that turns out. But hopefully people can find good ways of implementing it. Really, again, if we were putting those two together for AI versus VR.
Right. And of course, moving into the future as these technologies grow, we're going to see not necessarily get integrated into more games, but we're going to see more and more games just spawn out of the industry as we keep moving forward. And on that topic, this is a very, very simple question, but it might be a difficult one for you. In terms of games, Astrobot or Sackboy?
Oh my goodness.
Which one do you have?
I haven't played. Okay, so I haven't played the new Astrobot, but I have played the old one, right? And I really enjoyed that. It's tough to say, at least. I've obviously with Sackboy, I've done a fair bit on that. I think I'll give it to Sackboy for now, all things considered. But it was really cool in Astrobot, seeing the Super Rub-a-Dub reference in there, and that was one of the first things that Sumo made on the PS3 as well too, for people who were keeping track with with that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we got a Sumo reference there. What the heck?
Well, so yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I can get where you're coming from on that front, and so. Let's see. So I think we've tackled all the main stuff, but is there anything else you'd like to talk about? I have a couple of questions after this before we wrap up, but is there anything you'd like to share with the community that maybe you want people to know, that you really want to touch on? Maybe some obscure stuff that people might not know about your work on the game, your time working in games?
Okay, the one thing that I was actually really surprised to get into in LittleBigPlanet 3 was, I think it was maybe level 2 or level 3 in the first area, is when we had the videos of the tutorials about, I think it was using the PSI to take pictures and everything like that. The expectation was that we were supposed to have just stock footage or people hired to pretend to use the PSI and everything like that. So previously, before that, as with the tutorials, I was busy kind of building that stuff out so we can see how it works out. So I got my friend and coworker Holly back then. So we were pretending to be like, oh, look at us, we're using the PSI to make stickers, and I was, doing really dumb faces for the video and whatnot. And we used that as test footage to see how that would work. They ended up just keeping that. So we are the only two Sumo staff with our pictures in the game in LittleBigPlanet 3.
Oh, that's amazing. That's actually really cool. I remember the PSI being introduced, the functionality being introduced all the way back in LittleBigPlanet 1. And I remember I used to use that thing all the time in levels. I was a crazy 6-7-year-old back then. I was so crazy just using the camera and splattering my face everywhere. It was it was good times, and just seeing the integration of that functionality too, like how they were able to throughput the API into the game and actually allow you to render what the PSI was seeing and splat them onto stickers. So cool.
Just quickly going on that in terms of like community creation and stuff. For myself, I loved using the sticker functionality and the hologram tool with sequencers to help build pixel art as well too. So one of the things that I love to do was, and I still love doing on a certain time, is actually do pixel art. So I would actually create the pixel art on the computer, take a sticker sheet picture with the PSI, and then slap it onto a hologram material, and then use the sequencer and all the different nodes to be able to kind of flip through it, and you actually create pixel animations on the game to pretend that I'm working on a 2D pixel art game. That was really fun.
That's so cool. Well, we have last two questions here. And then we'll wrap up. So what are your plans for the future? I think that's a maybe loaded question, but
oh wow,
what do you see yourself doing in the next few years?
Yeah, well, obviously working as in business development, I really enjoy that in this side of the industry. That's definitely the career path that I'm taking, or I have taken. So I'm 100% in. So it's really cool seeing the beginnings of games, to say the least, or seeing multiple games in different parts of the development cycle, and being able to be a part of that in some form or fashion has been really cool. Sumo works with loads of different partners, and being able to kind of see stuff before things are announced across the world, like, ooh, it's really fun. But it's obviously talking about our studios and being able to talk for them. Everybody's really talented over here, and trying to be an ambassador for them is really fun, to say the least. So that's definitely, at least from a career perspective, continuing to do that. Obviously, I have a son who's a year and a half now, so hopefully can be a good father for them as well too. And then my seventh midlife crisis is skateboarding. I only started 2.5 years ago, and I've been having a really good time with that. So as a 43 year old, I'm 43 now, but it's been fun, just bombing off stair sets and all that jazz. I really should have done that when I was younger. I really feel the pain now, but it's kept me sprite and youthful, to say the least. You got to do what you can with this short life. So and just continue to play video games, and hopefully a lot of the stuff that we've done on the LittleBigPlanet franchise and Sackboy has inspired a lot of people to strive for the things that they want to do, because this stuff's fun, and that as long as you're having fun in a responsible way, of course, just do it. Shoot for the moon, because you never know what's going to happen. I personally never would have thought 20 years ago that I'd be in this position, let alone living in the UK, making video games and whatnot. So yeah, there's so much to do. Just enjoy.
All right, Mr. Dino, I've got one more thing. Which is better, Coke or Pepsi?
Oh, don't do that to me. So if it's sugary, probably Pepsi. If it's not, if it's like, a Coke Zero type thing, I like that. I like that more. So yeah, I've been drinking more non-sugary stuff. So I'm firmly in the Coke Zero path at the moment. But I've always been a big Pepsi head previously. So
all right, well, that was our interview with David Dino, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
Of course, Kenneth was first to be on the channel for the interview, but hey, you're second, and I think that's still great. I still think that's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out. So
yeah, so it's been great having you, and I'm sure a lot of people have gained some valuable insight into your work on the games and what you've done, and you've done a great service, I think, for millions of people around the world. I think you're really valuable, and you've helped shape my childhood, definitely. So it's great to to see into how games work and how it impacts people. All right, make sure to go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel, guys, and keep updated with the rest of our content. And yeah, we'll have more interviews and other content coming soon. Peace.